Have you ever looked at the person lying next to you in bed and wondered if you ever really knew them at all? I mean, truly knew them. Not the version they show you when the sun is shining and life is easy, but the real them. The person hiding beneath all those promises and smiles. I used to think I knew my husband. I used to believe that after 12 years of marriage, there were no secrets left between us. I was wrong. So terribly, painfully wrong. And the night I discovered just how wrong I was, it didn't come with warning signs or gentle revelations. It came with 4 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. 4 words that made me question my worth, my sanity, and my entire existence. He looked me straight in the eyes without a trace of shame and said, "Sleep on the floor tonight." Not because we were hosting family, not because there was some emergency, but because his mistress needed the bed, my bed, in my house. The house I helped pay for. The home I'd built with my own 2 hands and heart. That's where my story begins. Not with the betrayal itself, but with the moment I realized I had a choice. I could either break, or I could make sure he regretted every single second of what he'd done. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because what I'm about to share with you isn't just my story. It's a story for every person who's ever been made to feel small, worthless, or invisible by someone who promised to love them. And trust me, you're going to want to follow this journey all the way to the end. My name is Jennifer, though everyone calls me Jen. I'm 42 years old now, but when this story began, I was 40. I know what you're thinking. 40 isn't old, and you're right. But somehow my husband Marcus made me feel ancient, used up, disposable, like I was nothing more than an old piece of furniture he'd grown tired of looking at. For 12 years, I gave that man everything. My youth, my energy, my trust, my money. Yes, you heard that right, my money. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about certain kinds of marriages. Sometimes the person who contributes the least financially ends up controlling everything. And I was too blind, too in love, too hopeful to see it happening until it was almost too late. Marcus and I met when I was 28. I just got a promotion at the accounting firm where I worked. I was making good money, finally feeling stable and successful. He was charming, attentive, and he made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in years. He worked in sales, he told me, business development, always on the verge of the next big deal, the next major breakthrough. I believed him because I wanted to. Because when you spend your 20s building a career and watching all your friends get married, there's a part of you that's just relieved when someone wonderful finally sees you, finally chooses you. He got married within a year. Looking back now, I can see how fast it all moved. But at the time, it felt like destiny, like the universe finally giving me what I deserved. We bought a house together, though if I'm being honest, the down payment came mostly from my savings. Marcus said his money was tied up in investments, business opportunities that would pay off big in just a few months. Those months turned into years. The investments never materialized, but the promises never stopped coming either. And I, like a fool, kept believing, kept working, kept paying the mortgage, the bills, the credit cards, because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You support them, you build together, you trust that they'd do the same for you. For the first few years, things were actually good, or maybe I just convinced myself they were. Marcus could be incredibly sweet when he wanted to be. He'd bring me flowers for no reason. Cook dinner on nights when I worked late. Tell me I was beautiful even when I felt exhausted and worn down. We didn't have children, which was a sore spot for me. I wanted them, desperately. But Marcus always had a reason to wait. We needed to be more financially stable, he'd say. He needed to land that big promotion first. We needed to travel more, enjoy our freedom. There was always a reason, always an excuse. And eventually I stopped bringing it up, stopped hopping, stopped imagining the family we'd never have. Around year 7, things started to shift. Small things at first. He'd come home later from work, be less interested in conversation, spend more time on his phone, always angling the screen away from me. When I'd ask about his day, his answers became shorter, vaguer, but I didn't press. I didn't want to be that wife. The nagging, suspicious, insecure one. I wanted to be cool, understanding, trusting. All those things that women are told they should be, even when every instinct is screaming that something is wrong. I buried those instincts, pushed them down deep, told myself I was being paranoid, that marriage naturally evolved, that the intense passion of the early years always mellowed into something quieter, something less. I threw myself into work instead. I'd made senior accountant by then, and the job demanded long hours, especially during tax season. It was easier to focus on spreadsheets and client meetings than to examine the growing distance between my husband and me. We fell into a routine. I'd work late. He'd do whatever he did during the day. We'd exist in the same house, share the same bed, but live essentially separate lives. On weekends, he'd often disappear for hours. Golf with clients, he'd say. Networking events, business meetings. I never questioned it, never demanded to come along. I just accepted his word as truth because that's what 12 years of marriage had conditioned me to do. Then came the phone calls. Late at night, his phone would buzz and he'd step outside to take them. Private client, he'd explain. Different time zone. Sensitive business deal. I'd nod and go back to whatever I was doing, ignoring the knot forming in my stomach, ignoring the way my hands would shake slightly as I pretended to read or watch television. Deep down, in that place we don't like to acknowledge, I knew. Of course I knew. But knowing something and facing it are two completely different things. And I wasn't ready to face it. Wasn't ready to blow up my life based on a feeling. So I waited, and let the lies pile up around me like snow until I was buried so deep I could barely breathe. The first real crack in my denial came about 6 months before that terrible night. I was doing laundry, something I'd done thousands of times before. I reached into Marcus's pants pocket to make sure it was empty before throwing them in the wash. That's when I found it. A receipt from a restaurant. A nice restaurant. The kind of place Marcus and I hadn't been to in years. The date was from 3 days earlier. A Tuesday night. The same Tuesday night he'd told me he was working late on a project. The receipt showed 2 entrees, 2 desserts, a bottle of expensive wine. The total was over $300. My heart started pounding. I stood there in our laundry room holding that little piece of paper and felt the foundation of my world begin to crack. Maybe it was a business dinner, I told myself. Maybe he was entertaining a client. That's reasonable. That makes sense. But then why didn't he mention it? Why lie and say he was working at the office? I wanted to confront him, wanted to wave that receipt in his face and demand answers. But fear stopped me. Fear of what those answers might be. Fear of looking foolish if there was a perfectly innocent explanation. Fear of starting a fight that might end my marriage. So I folded that receipt, put it in my own pocket, and finished the laundry. And I hated myself for my cowardice. After that, I started noticing more. Little things that individually meant nothing, but together painted a picture I didn't want to see. The way he'd started dressing better, nicer shirts, new cologne. He joined a gym and suddenly cared about his appearance in a way he hadn't in years. When I complimented him, told him he looked good, he'd barely acknowledge it. Wouldn't return the compliment. Wouldn't pull me close and make me feel like his efforts were for me, because they weren't. They never were. He was preening for someone else, becoming a better version of himself for another woman. And I was just the roommate who paid the bills. I started checking our bank statements more carefully. We had separate accounts, but I paid most of the household expenses from mine. I noticed that his account, which I had login access to from years ago when we were more open with each other, showed regular charges at coffee shops, restaurants, even a hotel. A hotel. In our own city. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the transactions. Twice a month, sometimes more, a charge for a hotel room. Same hotel. Always a weekday afternoon. Each time I saw one, I felt like I was dying a little, but still, I said nothing. Still, I went through my days pretending everything was fine, smiling when he came home, asking about his day, playing the role of devoted wife while he played me for a complete fool. You might wonder why I didn't just confront him, why I didn't scream, throw him out, demand the truth. And honestly, I've asked myself that same question 1,000 times. I think part of it was disbelief. Like if I didn't say it out loud, if I didn't make it real with words, then maybe it wasn't happening. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there were explanations I hadn't considered. But deeper than that was fear. Bone-deep, terrifying fear. Fear of being alone at 40. Fear of starting over. Fear of admitting that I'd wasted 12 years on someone who didn't value me. Fear of facing the pity in people's eyes when they found out. So I stayed quiet. I collected evidence in my mind like pieces of a puzzle, but I never put them together, never looked at the full picture. Not yet. The Tuesday night before everything exploded, Marcus came home whistling, actually whistling. He was in a good mood, better than I'd seen in months. He even kissed me on the cheek, something he rarely did anymore. He seemed energized, excited. I asked him what had him so happy, and he said he'd closed a big deal at work, that things were really looking up. He suggested we order takeout and watch a movie together. It felt like old times, like the man I'd married. For one evening, I let myself believe that maybe I'd been wrong about everything. Maybe we were going through a rough patch, but we were coming out the other side. Maybe our marriage wasn't dying after all. We fell asleep on the couch together that night, my head on his shoulder. When we woke up around midnight, he gently suggested we go to bed. We walked upstairs together, got ready for bed in our usual routine, and climbed under the covers. He even held my hand for a moment before turning over to sleep. I lay there in the darkness, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Stupid, foolish hope. I should have known better. I should have trusted my instincts. Because less than 48 hours later, that same man would look me in the eyes and tell me to sleep on the floor. And my entire world would finally, completely shatter. Looking back now, I can see that good mood for what it really was. He wasn't happy because of work. He wasn't reconnecting with me out of love. He was planning something. The pieces were already in motion for the most humiliating night of my life, and I, wrapped up in desperate hope, had no idea what was coming. No idea that the very next Thursday would be the day my real life would begin. The day I'd stop being a victim and start being something else entirely. Something harder. Something he would learn to fear. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about Thursday. Let me tell you about the day my husband brought his mistress into our home and expected me to simply accept my place on the floor. It started like any other day. I woke up at 6, showered, dressed for work. Marcus was still sleeping, which was normal. He rarely got up before 9. I made coffee, checked my emails, and headed to the office. I had back-to-back meetings all day, the kind that drain every ounce of your energy. Tax deadlines were approaching, and clients were panicking. I spent 8 hours putting out fires, managing expectations, and solving problems. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, I was exhausted. My feet hurt. My head was pounding. All I wanted was to go home, change into comfortable clothes, and zone out in front of the television. I texted Marcus around 4 to ask if he wanted me to pick up dinner on the way home. He responded quickly, which was unusual. "No, don't worry about it," he wrote. "I'll handle dinner tonight. You just come home and relax." It was sweet, thoughtful, exactly the kind of gesture I'd been craving. I felt that dangerous flutter of hope again. Maybe the other night wasn't a fluke. Maybe he was really trying to reconnect. Maybe I'd been wrong about all of it, and we were actually going to be okay. I should have known better. I should have recognized the pattern. Every time Marcus was about to do something terrible, he'd be extra nice first, like he was building up credit to spend on cruelty. But I didn't see it. Didn't want to see it. So I drove home with a slight smile on my face, thinking about a quiet evening with my husband, thinking that maybe, just maybe, we'd turned a corner. I pulled into our driveway at 6:15. Marcus's car was there, which made sense. But there was another car, too. A silver BMW I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened. Company, I thought. He'd invited someone over without telling me. I felt a flash of annoyance. I wasn't dressed for entertaining. I wasn't mentally prepared for making small talk with strangers. But I pushed the feeling down, grabbed my bag, and headed inside. The house smelled like expensive takeout. Thai food, I thought. From that place downtown that we used to love but hadn't ordered from in years. I could hear voices in the kitchen. Marcus's laugh, low and warm, and another laugh. High, feminine, unfamiliar. My heart started beating faster. I set my bag down by the door and walked toward the kitchen, each step feeling heavier than the last. They were standing close together by the counter. Too close. Marcus was pouring wine into 2 glasses, and she was leaning against the counter like she belonged there. Like this was her kitchen, her home. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s. Long dark hair, perfect makeup, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my entire work wardrobe. She looked up when I entered, and the expression on her face wasn't surprise. It was amusement, like I was the punchline to a joke she was already in on. Marcus turned, and for just a second I saw something flash across his face. Guilt, maybe, or calculation, but it was gone so fast I might have imagined it. Then he smiled. That same charming smile that had won me over 14 years ago. "Jen, you're home," he said, like this was all perfectly normal. "This is Vanessa. I've mentioned her before, from work." He hadn't. He'd never mentioned anyone named Vanessa I would have remembered, but I stood there, frozen, while this woman extended her hand to me. "So nice to finally meet you," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Marcus has told me so much about you." I shook her hand because that's what you do. That's what politeness and social conditioning force you to do, even when every cell in your body is screaming. Her hand was soft, perfectly manicured. Her grip was confident, strong. This was a woman who'd never doubted her place in the world, never questioned her worth, and I hated her instantly. "I didn't realize we were having company," I said, looking at Marcus. My voice sounded strange, too high, too tight. "You didn't mention it." "Last-minute thing," Marcus said easily. "Vanessa's apartment is being fumigated. Emergency situation. I told her she could crash here for a couple of nights until it's safe to go back." He said it so casually, so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. My brain struggled to process his words. Crash here, our home, for multiple nights. This woman, this stranger. I opened my mouth to object, to say absolutely not, to demand what the hell he was thinking. But he was already moving on, already acting like it was decided. "I got Thai food for everyone," he said. "Let's eat. You must be starving, Jen." I wasn't hungry. My stomach was in knots. But I sat down at our dining table and watched as my husband served this woman food in my house, poured her wine from bottles I'd bought, laughed at her jokes like I wasn't even there. She sat in my usual chair, used my favorite wine glass, and Marcus didn't just allow it. He facilitated it, encouraged it. He was more animated than I'd seen him in years, telling stories, making her laugh, completely focused on her while I sat there like a ghost. I barely touched my food. I kept waiting for the moment to make sense, for someone to explain what was really happening. But the explanation didn't come. Instead, I watched my husband flirt openly with another woman at our dinner table. Watched him refill her glass before mine was even empty. Watched him hang on her every word like she was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. And when I tried to contribute to the conversation, tried to remind them both that I existed, he'd give me these tight little smiles before turning right back to her. After dinner, Vanessa excused herself to use the bathroom. The moment she was gone, I leaned toward Marcus. "What is this?" I hissed, keeping my voice low. "Who is she really?" "I told you," he said, not meeting my eyes. "She's from work. She needed a place to stay." "So let her get a hotel," I said. "We don't even know her." "Don't be ridiculous, Jen. Hotels are expensive. She's a colleague. We're just helping her out." "Wait," I said. "You didn't ask me. You didn't even tell me." He finally looked at me then, and his eyes were cold. Stranger's eyes. "It's my house too," he said quietly. "I can invite whoever I want." My house too. Like I hadn't been paying the mortgage for 12 years. Like my name wasn't on the deed. But before I could respond, Vanessa returned, and Marcus's face transformed back into that warm, welcoming smile. Back into a version of himself I no longer recognized. The evening dragged on. They moved to the living room. I made an excuse about being tired, about having work to do. I went upstairs to our bedroom and closed the door, my whole body shaking. I could hear their laughter drifting up from below. I sat on the edge of our bed and tried to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't about helping a colleague. This was something else, something worse. But how bad? How far had things already gone? Around 10 o'clock, I heard footsteps on the stairs. I braced myself, expecting Marcus to finally come to bed, to explain himself, to acknowledge how bizarre this all was. But when the bedroom door opened, it wasn't just Marcus. Vanessa was with him. She was carrying an overnight bag. She walked right into my bedroom like she had every right to be there. "Vanessa's going to sleep in here," Marcus said, not asking, telling. "The guest room has a leak. I've been meaning to fix it." We didn't have a leak. The guest room was perfectly fine. I'd been in there just last week, putting away clean linens. "What are you talking about?" I said. "There's no leak." "Well, there is," he said firmly. "And I'm not having a guest sleep in a damaged room. She'll take our bed. I'll sleep on the couch." Our bed. He was giving our bed to his mistress and planning to sleep on the couch. The relief I felt at that lasted approximately 3 seconds, because then he looked at me and I saw something cruel in his expression, something that enjoyed what was about to happen. "You should sleep somewhere else too," he said. "Give Vanessa her privacy." "Where exactly am I supposed to sleep?" I asked, my voice shaking. He shrugged. "Guest room, I guess, or the floor in here if you want to stay close to your clothes." The floor, he just told me to sleep on the floor of my own bedroom, in my own house, so his mistress could have the bed. I looked at Vanessa. She wasn't even pretending to be uncomfortable. She was smiling, actually smiling. "I really appreciate this," she said to Marcus, ignoring me completely. "You're such a lifesaver." Something inside me broke in that moment, or maybe it finally woke up. I stood there, looking at these two people, and I realized several things at once. First, they were absolutely sleeping together. Second, Marcus didn't respect me enough to even hide it properly. Third, I had a choice. I could scream, cry, beg, make a scene, or I could be smart, I could think, I could plan. Because if he thought he could humiliate me like this, if he thought I'd just accept my place on the floor, then he didn't know me at all anymore. Maybe he never had. "Fine," I heard myself say. The word came out calm, steady. "I'll sleep in the guest room." Marcus looked almost disappointed, like he'd been hopping for a bigger reaction. But I didn't give him one. I gathered my things for the next day, my work clothes, my toiletries. I moved like a robot, mechanical and emotionless. I walked past both of them without another word, went to the guest room and closed the door. And then, only then, did I let myself feel it. The rage, the humiliation, the absolute clarity of knowing exactly who my husband really was. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of my husband and his mistress in my bedroom. I didn't hear anything explicit, but I didn't need to. The knowledge of what was happening was enough. And somewhere around 3 a.m, as tears finally stopped falling and my breathing finally steadied, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the woman who slept on the floor. I wasn't going to be the woman who accepted this. I was going to be the woman who burned his whole world down. Carefully, methodically, completely. He wanted to destroy me. Fine, but I'd make damn sure he went down too, and unlike him, I'd be smart about it. I woke up in that guest room the next morning feeling like a completely different person. My eyes were swollen from crying. My head pounded. But underneath the pain was something new, something hard and cold that hadn't been there before. Anger. Pure, crystallized anger. Not the hot, explosive kind that makes you scream and throw things, but the ice-cold kind that makes you dangerous. The kind that makes you think clearly for the first time in years. I got ready for work in silence. I could hear movement in my bedroom, the bedroom that should have been mine. I heard Vanessa's laugh, high and carefree. I heard the shower running. She was using my shower, my bathroom, my expensive shampoo that I special ordered because my hair gets dry in the winter. Every small detail felt like another knife sliding between my ribs, but I didn't react. I got dressed, did my makeup carefully to hide the evidence of my breakdown, and headed downstairs. Marcus was in the kitchen making coffee. Not for me, he didn't even look up when I entered. He was preparing a tray. Coffee, toast, jam, fresh fruit arranged prettily on a plate. A tray for her, for Vanessa. In all our years of marriage, Marcus had never once brought me breakfast in bed, never once thought to make me coffee without being asked. But for her, for his mistress, he was playing house like a lovesick teenager. "Morning," I said flatly. He glanced up, barely meeting my eyes. "Morning, sleep okay?" The audacity of that question, the absolute nerve of this man. "Just fine," I lied. "What time does Vanessa's apartment get cleared?" "Not sure yet," he said, adding sugar to the coffee. He knew how she took it. Of course he did. "Might be a few more days. The fumigation process can take a while." A few more days. He expected me to endure this for days, to sleep in the guest room of my own house while his mistress lounged in my bed. I wanted to grab that tray and throw it against the wall. Wanted to scream until my throat was raw. Instead, I poured myself coffee into a travel mug, grabbed my bag, and headed for the door. "Jen," Marcus called out. I stopped but didn't turn around. "Try to be nice to Vanessa, okay? She's going through a hard time. This situation is stressful for her." Stressful for her, not for me, not for his wife who'd been displaced from her own bedroom, but for his mistress. I didn't trust myself to respond. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove to work with tears streaming down my face. I had to pull over twice because I couldn't see the road. Had to sit in a parking lot and breathe through the waves of humiliation and rage that kept crashing over me. Work was a blur. I went through the motions, attended meetings, responded to emails, but I wasn't really present. My mind was stuck in that house, imagining what they were doing, how they were laughing at me, whether they were in my bed right now, celebrating how easily they'd pushed me aside. My coworker Sarah asked if I was okay. I told her I had a headache. She offered me aspirin and sympathy, and I nearly broke down right there in the break room, but I held it together. Barely. I stayed at the office until almost 8 that night. I couldn't face going home. Couldn't face seeing them together again, pretending this was normal. When I finally pulled into the driveway, both cars were there. The house was lit up, warm and welcoming from the outside. A perfect picture of home. But inside was my nightmare. They were watching a movie in the living room. Vanessa was curled up on the couch, my couch, under the blanket my mother had made for me as a wedding gift. Marcus was sitting close to her, closer than necessary. They had wine. They'd ordered pizza. The scene was so domestic, so couple-like that I felt like the intruder in my own home. "Hey," Marcus said casually, like I was the roommate coming home, not his wife. "Pizza's in the kitchen if you want some." "I ate," I lied. I hadn't eaten all day. My stomach was churning too much for food. I went upstairs, back to the guest room, and closed the door. I sat on that bed and looked around at the room I'd decorated for visitors, for family and friends who came to stay. Never in a million years did I imagine I'd be the guest in my own home. That second night was worse than the first, because the shock had worn off and reality had settled in. This was really happening. My husband was openly carrying on an affair under my roof and expecting me to just accept it. And the most terrifying part, I'd let it get this far. I'd seen the signs for months, maybe years, and I'd done nothing. I'd been so afraid of being alone, so desperate to keep my marriage intact, that I'd allowed myself to become invisible, worthless, a non-person in my own life. I didn't sleep again. I lay there scrolling through my phone, looking at our bank accounts, our mortgage statements, our credit cards, seeing the full picture of my marriage laid out in numbers. I'd been paying for everything. The mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, the insurance. Marcus's account showed regular deposits from his job, but the money disappeared just as fast. Restaurants, bars, that hotel, shopping trips, expensive gifts I'd never received. He'd been spending his entire salary on his affair while I funded our actual life, while I played the fool. Around midnight, I heard them come upstairs, heard them go into my bedroom together, heard the door close, and I realized with absolute certainty that Marcus wasn't sleeping on the couch like he'd claimed that first night. He was sleeping with her, in our bed, while I lay alone in the guest room. The disrespect was so profound, so complete, that it actually took my breath away. How had I become this person, this doormat? When did I lose myself so completely? I spent that whole night doing research on my phone. Divorce laws in our state, asset division. What happened to houses when both names were on the deed? I looked up the best divorce attorneys in the city, read reviews, made notes. If this was how my marriage ended, I'd make sure I didn't walk away with nothing. But even as I planned, a part of me still couldn't believe it was real. Still hoped that maybe this was some kind of terrible test. That Marcus would come to his senses, throw Vanessa out, and beg for my forgiveness. That hope made me weak, made me stupid. But it was still there, a tiny flame I couldn't quite extinguish. The weekend was absolute hell. Vanessa didn't leave. Didn't go to work, didn't go check on her supposedly fumigated apartment. She just stayed, settled in like she lived there. She'd come down to breakfast in one of Marcus's shirts, her legs bare, her hair messy in that intentional way. She'd make herself coffee using my favorite mug. She'd sit at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone while Marcus cooked for her. Actually cooked. Eggs, bacon, pancakes. Things he claimed he didn't know how to make whenever I'd suggested he handle breakfast. I spent most of Saturday in the guest room, claiming I had work to do. Really, I just couldn't bear to watch them anymore. Couldn't bear the way he looked at her. The way he touched her casually, his hand on her shoulder, her waist. The way he smiled at her with actual warmth in his eyes. I hadn't seen him look at me like that in years, maybe ever, and it was destroying me piece by piece. Sunday afternoon, I forced myself to go downstairs. This was my house. I'd paid for it. I had every right to exist in it. I made myself lunch in the kitchen while they watched TV in the living room. Vanessa came in at one point, brushed past me like I was a servant, and grabbed a soda from the fridge. She didn't say excuse me, didn't acknowledge me at all, just took what she wanted and walked away. And Marcus, watching from the couch, said nothing, did nothing. Just let his mistress treat his wife like garbage in her own home. That night, Sunday night, I hit my breaking point. I was lying in the guest room again, listening to them again, and something inside me just snapped. I couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't spend another night exiled from my own bedroom. Couldn't watch my husband play house with another woman for one more second. I got up, threw on my robe, and marched down the hallway. I was going to confront them, throw her out, demand my bedroom back, demand some shred of dignity and respect. I raised my hand to knock on the bedroom door, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. But before my knuckles touched the wood, I heard them, talking, laughing, and then I heard my name. God, I almost feel bad for her, Vanessa said. Her voice was muffled but clear enough. She actually has no idea, does she? She's clueless, Marcus replied. Always has been. It's honestly kind of pathetic how easy this has been. When are you going to tell her? Vanessa asked. I mean, we can't keep this up forever. Soon, Marcus said. I'm just waiting for the right moment. Got to make sure everything's in place first. The last thing I need is her making this difficult. What can she really do? Vanessa laughed. You said she's completely dependent on you. She's not going anywhere. Dependent on him. Me, the woman who'd paid for everything for 12 years. He'd actually convinced his mistress that I was the dependent one, that I needed him. The delusion was so profound I almost laughed. Almost, but I couldn't, because I was too busy dying inside. I stood outside that door for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, listening to them talk about me like I was nothing, like I was a problem to be managed, an obstacle to be removed. And I realized that whatever small hope I'd been clinging to was gone, dead. Marcus didn't love me. He didn't even respect me. I was just an inconvenience he was planning to eliminate when the time was right. I walked back to the guest room in a daze, got back into bed, stared at the ceiling. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't cry. The tears were gone. The grief was gone. All that remained was clarity. Cold, perfect clarity. Marcus was planning something. He'd said he was waiting for everything to be in place. What did that mean? What was he planning? I spent the rest of that night thinking, really thinking, not about what I'd lost, but about what I still had. I had my job, my income, my brain, my name on the deed to this house. I had 12 years of financial records showing I'd paid for everything. I had knowledge of his affair. I had proof, if I was smart enough to gather it properly. And most importantly, I had something Marcus had forgotten I possessed, the ability to fight back. Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I waited until Marcus left, told Vanessa I wasn't feeling well, and stayed home. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I went into my bedroom, our bedroom, the room I'd been exiled from, and I started looking. I went through Marcus's nightstand first, found nothing but the usual junk, then his dresser, his closet. I was looking for something, anything that might tell me what he was planning, credit card statements, legal documents, anything. I found his laptop tucked under some sweaters on the top shelf of the closet. He'd never hidden it before. That was new. I pulled it out, opened it, and of course it was password protected. I tried our anniversary, his birthday, my birthday. Nothing worked. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that laptop, feeling frustrated and helpless. Then I remembered something. Years ago, Marcus had made me his emergency contact on everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, email accounts. Just in case something happened to him, he'd said, so we could take care of each other. He'd probably forgotten all about it. Men like Marcus, men planning betrayals, they forget the small details, the access they'd granted in moments of genuine partnership. I went to the home office, logged into our desktop computer, and started checking every account I had access to. I reset passwords using my email as the recovery option. One by one, I got into everything. His email, his credit cards, his bank account, and what I found made my blood run cold. He'd opened a new account 3 months ago, one I didn't know about. He'd been transferring money into it, not much at a time, just a few hundred here and there. Amounts small enough that I wouldn't notice from his paycheck deposits, but over 3 months it had added up. There was almost $8,000 in that secret account. Money he was hiding from me. But why? We had separate finances anyway. He could do whatever he wanted with his money. Unless he was planning something that required hidden assets, something like a divorce. I kept digging, went through his emails, found correspondence with a lawyer. My heart stopped. The emails went back 2 months. He'd been consulting with a divorce attorney for 2 months, planning this. The lawyer had sent him documents, advice, strategies for protecting his interests in the divorce. There was discussion of the house, of assets, of how to prove that he'd contributed more to the marriage than it appeared. They were building a case, planning to paint me as the freeloader, planning to take half of everything I'd worked for. And Vanessa, she wasn't just his mistress. According to the emails, she was part of the plan. She was supposed to stay in the house, establish residency, make me so uncomfortable that I'd leave. Once I moved out, Marcus's lawyer said it would be easier to claim the house, easier to argue that I'd abandoned the marriage, that he was the one who'd stayed, who'd maintained the home. They were setting a trap, and I'd been walking right into it. I printed everything. Every email, every bank statement, every piece of evidence I could find. I created a folder on a flash drive and backed it all up. Then I cleared the browsing history, closed everything, and put it all back exactly as I'd found it. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. But my mind was crystal clear for the first time in weeks. Months, maybe years. Marcus wasn't just cheating on me. He was plotting to destroy me financially, to take the home I'd paid for and leave me with nothing, to rewrite the history of our marriage and make himself the victim. And he thought I was too stupid, too pathetic, too dependent to fight back. He'd underestimated me so completely that he'd gotten sloppy, left trails, given me access, and now I had everything I needed to bury him. I spent that whole day planning. I made lists, timelines, I organized the evidence. I researched lawyers specifically looking for the most aggressive, successful divorce attorneys in the state, not the one Marcus had hired. That man seemed competent but conservative. I needed someone ruthless, someone who would go for the throat. I needed a fighter because this wasn't going to be a quiet, amicable divorce. This was going to be war. By the time Vanessa came home that evening, I was back in the guest room playing sick. She knocked once, asked if I needed anything in a voice that dripped with false concern. I said no. She left. I heard Marcus come home an hour later, heard them greet each other with warmth and affection. Heard them start cooking dinner together, their voices mingling, laughing, the sounds of a happy couple, and I felt nothing. No pain, no jealousy, just cold calculation. I knew what I had to do. I had to play along. Had to pretend I was the pathetic, clueless wife they thought I was. Had to let them think their plan was working. Because the best revenge isn't hot and impulsive. It's cold and calculated. It's letting your enemies think they're winning right up until the moment you destroy them. And I was going to destroy Marcus. Not just divorce him, destroy him. Take everything he thought he was entitled to. Expose him for exactly who he was. Make him regret every single moment he'd underestimated me. But I couldn't do it from a position of weakness. I couldn't do it while I was sleeping in the guest room, crying myself to sleep, letting him control the narrative. I needed to be smart, strategic. I needed allies, resources, a plan so thorough that he'd never see it coming. And most of all, I needed patience. The patience to smile at him every day while I systematically dismantled his entire life. Tuesday morning, I went back to work. I stopped by Sarah's desk first thing. Sarah had been my friend for 7 years. She was sharp, loyal, and she'd been through a nasty divorce herself 3 years ago. If anyone would understand, it would be her. I asked if she wanted to grab coffee before we started. She took one look at my face and said yes immediately. We went to the cafe down the street, found a quiet corner, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I told someone the truth. I told her everything. The affair, the humiliation, the plan I'd uncovered, the evidence I'd gathered. I watched her face go from shock to anger to something harder, something determined. "You're going to destroy him," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm going to try," I said. "No," she said firmly. "You're going to succeed, and I'm going to help you. My lawyer, the one who handled my divorce, she's a pit bull. She doesn't lose, ever, especially when there's this much evidence. Can you get me copies of everything you found?" I nodded. I'd brought the flash drive with me, couldn't risk leaving it at the house. Sarah took it, promised to make copies and get them to her lawyer today. She'd make the introduction, set up a meeting, get the ball rolling while Marcus thought he was still in control. How long are you going to let her stay in your house? Sarah asked. As long as it takes, I said. The longer this goes on, the worse he looks. The more evidence I have of the affair, let him get comfortable. Let him think he's won. And then I'll pull the rug out from under him so hard he won't know what hit him. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who understood exactly what I was planning. You're going to need to document everything, she said. Keep a journal, dates, times, what happened, photos if you can get them. The more evidence, the better. I started that day. I bought a small notebook and kept it in my purse. Every interaction with Marcus and Vanessa got recorded. Every humiliation, every expense, every detail of their affair playing out in my home. I took photos, too, when I could. Vanessa's car in the driveway, her belongings in my bedroom, receipts for dinners and gifts Marcus bought her. I became a detective in my own life, gathering ammunition for the battle I knew was coming. That Wednesday, Sarah called me. Her lawyer wanted to meet. Could I do Thursday after work? I said yes. That Thursday, I left the office at 5, told Marcus I had a work dinner, and drove across town to the law offices of Patricia Morrison, attorney at law. The office was sleek, expensive-looking. The kind of place that told you they won cases and charged accordingly. Patricia herself was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. She'd already reviewed everything on the flash drive, had it all organized in a folder in front of her. You've done excellent work gathering this, she said. Most clients come to me with feelings and suspicions. You came with evidence. That makes my job significantly easier. Can I win? I asked, the question that had been eating me alive. Win, Patricia smiled. Mrs. Harrison, you're not going to just win. You're going to annihilate him. The evidence of the affair alone would be enough in our state. But the financial planning, the consultation with his lawyer, the deliberate attempt to establish his mistress in the marital home to force you out, that's not just infidelity. That's fraud, emotional abuse, financial manipulation. By the time I'm done, he'll be lucky to walk away with his car and his clothes. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something other than pain or anger. I felt hope. Real hope. Not the desperate, pathetic hope that Marcus might change, but hope that I could actually come out of this intact, that I could make him pay for what he'd done. Patricia laid out the strategy. We'd file for divorce, but not yet. First, we'd let this play out a little longer. Let Marcus keep digging his own grave. In the meantime, I'd continue documenting. I'd also start separating my finances, protecting my assets. We'd open a new bank account in just my name, transfer my paychecks there, make sure Marcus couldn't access my money. We'd prepare the filing so that when we were ready, we could move fast, serve him before he had a chance to serve me. Control the narrative from the start. How long do I have to live like this? I asked. In the guest room, watching them. Can you give me 3 more weeks? Patricia asked. I know it's hard, but the longer the affair continues in your home, the worse it looks for him. Judges hate this kind of blatant disrespect. If you can document 3 weeks of this, maybe a month, his lawyer won't be able to spin it. It'll be indefensible. 3 weeks, 21 more days of sleeping in the guest room, of watching my husband with his mistress, of being invisible in my own home. Could I survive it? A week ago, I would have said no. But now, armed with evidence and a plan and a lawyer who actually believed in me, now I could do anything. Because every day of humiliation was another nail in Marcus's coffin. Every day was another piece of evidence, another reason for the judge to rule in my favor. I can do 3 weeks, I said. And I did. I went home that night and I played my role perfectly, the defeated wife. The woman too broken to fight back. I stayed in the guest room. I avoided confrontation. I went to work, came home late, and made myself scarce. I let Marcus think he'd broken me. Let Vanessa think she'd won. But every night I documented everything in my journal, every slight, every humiliation, every moment they thought they were getting away with destroying me. Marcus started getting bolder. He stopped pretending Vanessa was sleeping in the bedroom alone. They'd come down to breakfast together, clearly having spent the night in the same bed. He stopped making excuses about fumigation or leaks. Vanessa just lived there now. She'd taken over my closet space, my bathroom. She'd rearranged the furniture to suit her taste. She acted like the lady of the house while I was treated like an unwanted guest. But I smiled. I stayed quiet. I played weak. Because I knew something they didn't. Every day they continued this charade was another day I was building an unbeatable case. And when the time came, when Patricia said we were ready, I was going to make Marcus regret every single moment he'd underestimated me. Every time he'd made me feel small. Every time he'd chosen her over me. Every time he'd spent my money on his affair while I worked to keep our life together. The anger that had been hot and chaotic in those first days had transformed into something else. Something cold and patient and utterly focused. I wasn't the broken woman sleeping on the floor anymore. I was the woman gathering evidence, building her case, preparing for war. And Marcus, stupid, arrogant Marcus, had no idea what was coming for him. 3 weeks turned into 4. Patricia wanted just a little more time, a little more evidence. And honestly, I didn't mind. Because something strange was happening to me during those weeks of playing the defeated wife. I was getting stronger. Every morning I woke up in that guest room, I felt a little more powerful, a little more certain. The woman who'd cried herself to sleep those first few nights was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, someone who knew exactly what she was worth and exactly how to fight for it. I opened a new bank account like Patricia suggested. A completely separate account at a different bank, one Marcus had no connection to. I had my paychecks rerouted there. Set up automatic payments for my car, my phone, my personal credit card. Things that were solely mine. I was carefully, methodically separating my financial life from his, and he didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He never paid attention to my finances anyway, except when he needed me to cover something he couldn't afford. I also started moving my important documents out of the house. My passport, birth certificate, social security card, the title to my car. Everything that mattered went into a safety deposit box at my new bank. I took photos of everything in the house too. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every item of value. Created a complete inventory with dates of purchase and who paid for what. Spoiler alert, I'd paid for almost everything. The couch, the dining table, the TV, the expensive coffee maker Marcus used every morning to brew coffee for his mistress. All mine, purchased with my money, and I had receipts to prove it. Patricia had me start tracking Marcus's daily movements too. Where he went when he came home, who he was with. I created a spreadsheet. Noted every time he and Vanessa left the house together, every time they came back late, every overnight stay. I felt like a spy in my own life, but it was necessary, because Marcus's lawyer would try to claim this was a recent thing, a mistake, a moment of weakness, but my evidence would show it was prolonged, calculated, and deliberate. That he'd moved his mistress into our marital home, and carried on the affair right in front of me with full awareness of what he was doing. I also started secretly recording conversations. Our state was a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record any conversation I was part of. So I started keeping my phone in my pocket, voice recorder running, during any interaction with Marcus or Vanessa. I captured Marcus telling me to just deal with it when I tentatively suggested that maybe Vanessa should start looking for her own place. Captured Vanessa making snide comments about my clothes, my appearance, my cooking. Captured Marcus laughing at those comments instead of defending me. Every cruel word, every dismissive tone, every moment of disrespect got recorded and backed up and added to the growing mountain of evidence. Sarah became my lifeline during this time. She was the only person who knew what I was really doing. Everyone else at work thought I was going through a hard time, getting quiet and withdrawn. They weren't wrong, but they didn't know the half of it. Sarah would check on me multiple times a day, text me encouragement, remind me that this was temporary, that soon, very soon, I'd be free. And she helped with evidence gathering too. She'd come over on weekends when Marcus and Vanessa went out, help me photograph things, organize documents, make sure I wasn't missing anything important. One Saturday, about 5 weeks into this nightmare, Sarah and I were in the home office while Marcus and Vanessa were out at some wine tasting event. We were going through financial records when Sarah found something I'd missed. A credit card I didn't know about. It was in Marcus's name, but the statements were being sent to an email address I hadn't checked. We logged in, and my stomach dropped. $53,000. He'd racked up $53,000 in debt on this card. Jewelry, expensive dinners, hotel rooms, shopping sprees, all for Vanessa, all in the last 8 months. 8 months. This affair had been going on for at least 8 months, probably longer. and he'd spent more than $50,000 on it. Money he didn't have. Money he'd borrowed with no way to pay back, because the minimum payments alone were more than his monthly paycheck. "He's drowning," Sarah said, looking at the statement. "This is why he's pushing for divorce. He needs access to your assets to pay this off." Of course, it all made sense now. The hidden bank account, the consultations with lawyers, the plan to claim the house. He wasn't just cheating. He was bankrupt. He'd spent himself into a hole trying to impress Vanessa, and now he needed my money to dig himself out. The house we owned together, the house I'd paid the mortgage on for 12 years, was worth about $400,000. We owed maybe $150,000 on it. If he could claim half the equity, that would give him $125,000. Enough to pay off the credit card and have money left over to start his new life with Vanessa. "He's not getting a penny," I said. My voice was calm, cold. "Not one goddamn penny of my money is going to pay for his affair." Sarah printed the credit card statements, added them to my evidence file, which was now 3 inches thick. "Patricia is going to lose her mind when she sees this," she said. "Marital debt incurred for an affair. He's going to be solely responsible for every cent of this." That night when Marcus came home tipsy and happy from his wine tasting, I looked at him differently, not with hurt or betrayal, but with something almost like pity. He thought he was so smart, thought he'd planned everything perfectly, but he'd left a trail of evidence so obvious that even an amateur could follow it. And I wasn't an amateur anymore. I'd become an expert in his deception, knew his finances better than he did, knew his plans, his schemes, his secrets, and he had no idea. "Did you have a good time?" I asked him, playing the part. "Great time," he said, barely looking at me. "Vanessa really knows her wine. It's nice to be with someone who appreciates the finer things." The implication was clear. I didn't appreciate the finer things. I was boring, unsophisticated, not like Vanessa with her expensive tastes and her designer clothes. The clothes he'd bought her with money he didn't have while I paid the mortgage. The irony was so profound it was almost funny. "That's nice," I said quietly. "I'm glad you enjoyed yourself." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Confusion maybe, or suspicion, like he couldn't quite figure out why I wasn't fighting back, why I'd become so passive. But then Vanessa called him from upstairs and the moment passed. He went to her and I went to the guest room and the charade continued. Week 6 arrived. Patricia called me at work. "We're ready," she said. "I've got everything filed. The papers are prepared. We can serve him whenever you want." "How fast can we do this?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I can have a process server at your house tomorrow if you want. Or we can wait until you're ready, until you feel safe." Safe? I hadn't felt safe in my own home in over a month. Hadn't felt like a person with rights and dignity. Tomorrow felt too soon. But also, I didn't know if I could last another week. Another day. I was so tired of pretending. So tired of being invisible. So tired of watching my husband play house with another woman while I lived like a ghost. "There's something I want to do first," I said. "Before we serve him, I want to move out, not permanently, just for the filing. I want to be staying somewhere else when he gets served. I don't want to be there for his reaction." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "That's smart," she said. "Actually, that's very smart. It protects you physically and emotionally. Do you have somewhere to go?" I did. Sarah had already offered me her spare room multiple times, had told me I could stay as long as I needed. "Yes," I said. "I can be out this weekend." "Perfect," Patricia said. "Here's what we'll do. You move out Saturday. Take everything that's yours. Important documents, clothes, anything with sentimental value. Make it clear you're not abandoning the home, just temporarily relocating for your safety and well-being. We'll serve him Monday morning. And Jen, once those papers are served, the court order goes into effect immediately. He'll be legally required to stop disposing of assets. His accounts will be frozen. Everything will be locked down until the divorce is settled." I'd waited 6 weeks for this moment. 6 weeks of humiliation and pain and playing weak. And now it was finally here. The beginning of the end. The moment I stopped being a victim and became a fighter. "Let's do it," I said. That Saturday morning, I woke up early. Marcus and Vanessa were still sleeping in my bed. For the last time, I got up, got dressed, and started packing. Everything that mattered went into suitcases and boxes. My clothes, my jewelry, my photo albums, my grandmother's quilt. I worked quietly but quickly. By the time they woke up, my car was packed full. Marcus came downstairs around 10, found me carrying a box to the car. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I'm leaving for a while," I said, calm, steady. "Staying with a friend, I just need some space." I saw relief flash across his face. This was what he wanted, what he'd been pushing for. Me out of the house, out of the way, making it easy for him. "How long?" he asked, trying to sound concerned but failing completely. "I'm not sure," I said. "As long as I need." "Okay," he said. He didn't try to stop me, didn't ask if we could talk, didn't suggest counseling or therapy or any attempt to save our marriage. He just said okay and went to make coffee for Vanessa. And I walked out of that house with my head held high, knowing I'd never sleep in the guest room again, knowing that the next time I walked through that door, it would be on my terms. I drove to Sarah's apartment and unloaded everything. Set up in her guest room, which was small but mine. All mine. No mistress in the next room. No husband who hated me. Just quiet and safety and the knowledge that I was finally taking control of my life. Sarah made us lunch, and we sat on her balcony looking out over the city, and for the first time in 6 weeks, I could breathe. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. "Terrified," I admitted, "but also free. Is that weird?" "Not even a little bit," she said. "You've been in prison for 6 weeks. You just escaped." Monday morning, I went to work like normal, but I couldn't focus, couldn't think about anything except what was happening. Patricia had told me the process server would arrive at the house at 9 a.m. Marcus worked from home most Mondays. He'd be there. He'd answer the door, and his whole world would explode. At 9:15, my phone rang. "Patricia." "It's done," she said. "He's been served. The papers include the divorce filing, the restraining order preventing him from disposing of assets, and the motion for temporary exclusive use of the marital home." "Wait, what?" I said. "Exclusive use?" "I told you I was good," Patricia said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Based on the evidence of him moving his mistress into the home, creating a hostile environment, and constructively evicting you, I filed for you to have temporary exclusive use of the house. He has 72 hours to remove himself and Miss Vanessa from the premises. After that, if he's still there, we get the police involved." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what she was telling me. He had to leave. The house was mine. How did you? "Evidence, Jen. We have 6 weeks of documented abuse. Of him forcing you from your bedroom, moving his mistress in, making the home uninhabitable for you. No judge is going to let that stand. He'll argue it, of course, but we'll win. You're getting your house back." I sat at my desk, phone pressed to my ear, and I felt tears streaming down my face. But they weren't sad tears. They weren't tears of pain or humiliation. They were tears of relief, of vindication, of justice finally being served. My phone started buzzing with texts. Marcus. 7 texts in a row, then calls. I didn't answer, didn't even read the texts. Patricia had told me not to communicate with him directly anymore. Everything went through lawyers now. Let him panic. Let him scramble. Let him feel one fraction of the fear and uncertainty he'd put me through. An hour later, Patricia called back. "His lawyer just called me. They want to negotiate, want to work out a settlement before this goes to court." "Absolutely not," I said. "I want my day in court. I want everything on record, everything he did, everything he spent, every lie he told. I want it public and documented and permanent." "You're sure?" Patricia asked. "Going to trial is expensive, emotionally draining. A settlement would be faster, cleaner." "I'm sure," I said. "He wanted to destroy me, to take everything I'd worked for and leave me with nothing. He humiliated me in my own home, made me sleep in the guest room while he played house with his mistress. I'm not giving him an easy out. I'm not protecting his reputation or his pride. I want the world to know exactly who Marcus Harrison is." "Then that's what we'll do," Patricia said. "And Jen, we're going to bury him." The next 72 hours were chaos. Marcus called me 47 times. I know because I counted, didn't answer once. He sent emails, texts, even tried to contact me through work. All of it went straight to Patricia. His messages started out angry. How dare I ambush him like this? How dare I make him look bad? Then they turned desperate. We could work this out. We could go to counseling. This was all a misunderstanding. Then they turned mean. I was a vindictive bitch. A cold, heartless woman. He'd never loved me anyway. I was getting exactly what I deserved. Patricia forwarded every single message to the court. Every angry rant. Every nasty insult. Every piece of communication that showed exactly what kind of man Marcus was. Keep them coming, she said. Every text is more evidence. His lawyer must be losing his mind telling him to shut up, but he can't help himself. Men like him never can. Wednesday evening, Sarah and I drove past the house. Both cars were gone. The lights were off. Marcus had left, taken Vanessa and whatever belongings he could pack and gone. I didn't know where, didn't care. All that mattered was that they were out. The house was empty, mine. I had the locks changed that night, hired a company to come out and rekey everything. And Thursday morning, I walked back into my home as its sole occupant. The house felt different, bigger somehow, emptier but also cleaner. I went upstairs to the master bedroom, the room I'd been exiled from for 6 weeks. Vanessa had left it a mess, clothes everywhere, makeup on the bathroom counter, the bed unmade. I stripped the sheets, threw them directly in the garbage, cleaned every surface, opened the windows and let fresh air blow through, reclaimed every inch of my space. In the closet, I found things she'd left behind. Expensive dresses Marcus had bought her, shoes that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I bagged it all up. Didn't keep a single thing. It all went to donation, and I took a receipt for the tax write-off. Even in my anger, I was practical. I found something else too, tucked in the back of Marcus's nightstand drawer, hidden under some old papers. A piece of paper with handwriting I didn't recognize. Vanessa's handwriting, I assumed. It was a list. After the divorce, it said at the top. And below that, a bulleted list of all the things she and Marcus planned to do with my money. Renovate the house, buy a new car, take a vacation to Europe, start a business. Every single item was something they'd planned to fund with half of my home equity, with the money I'd earned, the life I'd built. They'd already spent it in their minds, already divided up the spoils of destroying me. I took a photo of that list, sent it to Patricia. She called me immediately. "This is gold," she said. "This proves premeditation, proves they planned this together, proves it was never about love or fumigation or any of the lies. It was about money, your money. The judge is going to eat this up." I kept that original list, put it in a frame and hung it in my home office. A reminder, not of what they'd almost taken from me, but of what I'd saved, what I'd fought for, what I'd refused to give up without a battle. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, depositions, discovery, financial disclosures. Marcus had to reveal everything, every account, every debt, every purchase. And watching his face when he had to admit to the $53,000 credit card, when he had to explain under oath what that money had been spent on, that was the first real moment of revenge. The first time I saw him squirm. The first time he realized he wasn't getting out of this unscathed. Vanessa disappeared during this time, just vanished from Marcus's life. Apparently, when she realized there was no money coming, no house to renovate, no European vacation, she lost interest. Found some other man to leech off of. Marcus tried to paint himself as the victim there too, claimed she'd used him, but Patricia shut that down fast. "You moved her into your marital home," she said during his deposition. "You spent over $50,000 on her. You planned to divorce your wife to be with her. That's not being used. That's being complicit." Marcus tried to claim he deserved half the house. His lawyer argued that even though I'd paid most of the mortgage, it was still marital property. They tried to say his contributions to the household were non-financial, that he'd provided emotional support, domestic labor, companionship. Patricia literally laughed. Then she presented evidence of the last 5 years. Me working full-time while also doing all the grocery shopping, most of the cooking, most of the cleaning. Evidence of Marcus's spending on his affair. Evidence of the hostile environment he'd created. Evidence of everything. "Your Honor," Patricia said during one of the hearings, "Mr. Harrison wants credit for contributions he didn't make while being rewarded for an affair he conducted openly in the marital home. He wants to benefit from the humiliation and emotional abuse of his wife. That's not how the law works. That's not how justice works. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd probably seen every trick in the book, looked at Marcus with barely concealed disgust. "I'm inclined to agree," she said. That's when I knew we'd won. Not just the house, everything. Marcus's lawyer knew it too. After that hearing, they came back with a settlement offer. Marcus would walk away with nothing. No share of the house, no alimony, no shared assets. He'd take his personal belongings, his car, and his debt, all $53,000 of it. In exchange, I wouldn't pursue him for the money he'd spent from our joint accounts over the years. Wouldn't seek reimbursement for my half of everything he'd wasted on his affair. Patricia looked at me. "It's your call. We can take this to trial, make him pay back every cent. But it'll take months, maybe a year, cost more in legal fees, and honestly, he doesn't have the money to pay you back anyway. He's broke. This way, you get the house free and clear, you get to move on with your life, and he gets to live with the consequences of his choices." I thought about it, about what I really wanted. Was it worth dragging this out for months just to make him suffer more? Or was it better to end it now, take my victory, and never have to see him again? "I'll take the settlement," I said. "But I want one more thing." "Name it," Patricia said. "I want a clause that he can never speak publicly about me. Can't post on social media, can't talk to mutual friends, can't spread lies or try to damage my reputation. If he violates it, he pays a $100,000 fine." Patricia smiled. "Done." We signed the settlement 3 days later. I didn't attend in person, couldn't bear to be in the same room as Marcus. But Patricia was there, and she called me the moment it was done. "It's over," she said. "You're officially divorced. The house is yours. Everything is yours. He's out of your life forever." I hung up the phone and sat in the living room of my house. My house, fully mine. No mortgage payment to split. No husband to support. No mistress lurking in my bedroom. Just me and silence and the rest of my life stretching out ahead of me. And for the first time in 12 years, that future looked bright. I thought that would be it. Thought I'd sign the papers, get my house, and never see Marcus again. That we'd just drift into separate lives, and that would be the end of our story. But life is never quite that clean, is it? There's always one more chapter, one more confrontation, one more moment where everything that's been left unsaid finally comes spilling out into the open. It happened about 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. I was at the grocery store on a Saturday afternoon, just doing my normal shopping. I'd fallen into a new routine by then. Work during the week, quiet evenings at home, weekends spent rediscovering who I was without Marcus. I'd redecorated the bedroom, painted the living room a color I actually liked, bought new furniture that was mine and only mine. I was building a new life piece by piece, and honestly, I was happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way I hadn't been in years. I was in the produce section, trying to decide between 2 different types of apples, when I heard his voice. "Jennifer." I froze, turned around slowly, and there he was, Marcus, but not the Marcus I'd last seen 6 weeks ago. This Marcus looked terrible. He'd lost weight, and not in a good way. His clothes hung off him. His face was gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes. His hair was unwashed, greasy. He looked like a man who'd been living in his car, which I'd later find out he actually had been for a while. "Marcus," I said, my voice flat, neutral. I didn't owe him emotion anymore, didn't owe him anything. "Can we talk?" he asked. His voice was different too, smaller. The confidence, the arrogance that used to define him was gone. "Please, just 5 minutes." Every instinct told me to say no, to walk away, to refuse him even this small thing. But there was a part of me, a part I wasn't particularly proud of, that wanted to hear what he had to say, wanted to see him grovel, wanted to look him in the eyes and see the regret, so I nodded. 5 minutes, outside. We walked out to the parking lot in silence, stood between our cars. Mine was the same reliable sedan I'd been driving for 5 years, well-maintained and paid off. His was different, not the nice BMW he used to drive. Some beat-up Honda that looked like it had seen better days 20 years ago. He saw me notice it. "Had to sell the BMW," he said quietly. "Needed the money." "For what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Debt, that credit card the one I..." He couldn't even finish the sentence, couldn't admit out loud what he'd done. I'm living with my brother now in his basement, working 2 jobs trying to pay it off. I felt nothing, no sympathy, no satisfaction, just emptiness. This broken man in front of me had once been my husband, had once promised to love me, honor me, cherish me, and he'd thrown it all away for what? For Vanessa, who disappeared the moment the money dried up, for some fantasy life that never existed, for ego and selfishness and the thrill of having something new. Why are you telling me this? I asked. I don't know, he said. He ran his hand through his greasy hair. I guess I just needed you to know that I'm sorry, that I know I messed up, that I destroyed the best thing in my life because I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot, Marcus, I said calmly. Idiots make mistakes. What you did was deliberate, calculated. You didn't just cheat on me. You moved your mistress into our home. You made me sleep in the guest room. You planned to steal my house, my money, everything I'd worked for. That's not stupidity. That's cruelty. He flinched. I know, God, Jen, I know, I got caught up in something. Vanessa, she made me feel, I don't know, young again, exciting, like I was someone important. And I made you feel what? I asked. Old, boring, unimportant. I was your wife, Marcus. I worked full-time and still came home and cooked your dinner. I paid the bills so you could spend your money on God knows what. I supported you, believed in you, stood by you, for 12 years, and that wasn't enough. It should have been, he said quietly. Tears were forming in his eyes. You were enough, more than enough. I was just too stupid to see it. Now you call yourself stupid, I said. Convenient. What do you want me to say? His voice broke. That I'm sorry, I am, that I regret everything. I do. That I'd do anything to take it back, I would. But I can't. I destroyed us. I destroyed everything. And now I have nothing. I looked at him standing there, this shell of a man who used to be my husband, and I realized something. This wasn't satisfying. I'd imagined this moment during those long nights in the guest room. Imagined Marcus broken and begging for forgiveness. Imagined myself triumphant, powerful, throwing his apologies back in his face. But the reality was just sad, just pathetic. There was no victory in watching someone self-destruct, no joy in seeing him suffer, even though he deserved every bit of it. You're right, I said. You have nothing, and whose fault is that? Mine, he said immediately. All mine, I know that. But Jen, please, can you forgive me? Not for my sake, I know I don't deserve it, but for yours so you can move on without all this anger. I laughed, actually laughed. You think I'm angry? Marcus, I'm not angry anymore. I was, for a long time, I was furious, hurt, devastated. But you know what? I worked through it. I processed it. I moved on. And now when I look at you, I don't feel anger. I feel nothing. You're a stranger to me. A stranger who hurt me once upon a time, but who doesn't have any power over me anymore. So you do forgive me. He looked hopeful, desperate. No, I said firmly. I don't forgive you. Forgiveness implies that I'm letting go of something I'm holding on to. But I'm not holding on to anything, Marcus. I don't think about you. I don't waste energy hating you or missing you or wishing things were different. You're just not part of my life anymore, and that's not forgiveness. That's indifference. He looked like I'd slapped him, and maybe in a way I had, because being hated means you still matter. Being unforgiven means someone still cares enough to hold a grudge. But indifference? Indifference means you've become irrelevant, and I could see in his eyes that he understood that. That maybe on some level he'd been hoping I still cared, still thought about him, still loved him despite everything. And learning that I didn't, that he'd killed whatever feelings I'd had so thoroughly that not even hatred remained. That was its own kind of death. I loved you, he said quietly. I really did. I know you don't believe me, but I did. Maybe you did, I said. In your way, but your way was selfish. Conditional. You loved me when it was convenient, when I was useful, when I wasn't in the way of something you wanted more. That's not real love, Marcus. Real love is choosing someone every day, protecting them, respecting them. I loved you that way. You never loved me that way. And honestly, I don't think you're capable of it. That's not true, he protested. I can change. I have changed. Losing you, losing everything it taught me. It taught you nothing, I interrupted. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. If Vanessa had stayed, if you'd gotten half the house, if your plan had worked, you wouldn't be standing here apologizing. You'd be living in my house with her, spending my money, and I'd be the one with nothing. Don't pretend this is about growth or lessons learned. This is about you wanting to feel less guilty. The silence stretched between us. A car drove past. Somewhere a shopping cart rattled. Normal sounds of a normal Saturday, but nothing about this moment felt normal. "What happened to Vanessa?" I asked, surprising myself. I hadn't planned to ask, hadn't thought I cared, but curiosity got the better of me. Marcus's face twisted. "She's engaged." Already. It had only been a few weeks since the divorce finalized. To some guy she met at a conference. Rich guy, older, exactly what she was looking for. He laughed bitterly. "I saw it on Facebook. Her showing off a ring that probably cost more than I make in a year. She didn't even have the decency to block me." "So she used you," I said. "Yeah," he admitted. "She absolutely used me. Saw a married guy with a house and savings and thought she'd found her meal ticket. When she realized there was no money, that you weren't just going to roll over and give me everything, she bylaid. Didn't even say goodbye, just stopped answering my calls." "And you expect me to feel sorry for you?" I asked. "You destroyed our marriage for a woman who didn't even care about you, who was literally just using you for money you didn't even have. You have to see the irony there, right?" "I see it," he said quietly. "Believe me, I see it. I wake up every day in my brother's basement, working retail jobs to pay off debt I accrued trying to impress a woman who never gave a damn about me, while I threw away a wife who actually loved me. Yeah, I see the irony." I should have felt vindicated. This was everything I'd wanted, wasn't it? Marcus suffering. Marcus realizing what he'd lost. Marcus facing consequences. But standing there looking at him, all I felt was tired. Tired of the whole situation. Tired of the drama. Tired of the part of my life that he represented. "I need you to understand something," I said. "This conversation we're having right now, this is closure for you, not for me. I already had my closure. I got it the day the divorce was finalized. The day I changed the locks. The day I woke up in my house, in my bed, and realized I never had to see you again. I don't need your apologies or your regrets. I don't need to know that you're suffering or that you realize what you lost. None of that matters to me because you don't matter to me. Not anymore." "Then why did you agree to talk to me?" he asked. Good question. Why had I? Honestly, I think I needed to see you one more time to confirm what I already knew, that I made the right choice. That leaving you fighting for everything, refusing to just accept what you tried to do to me, all of it was right. And looking at you now, I know it was, because I could be you right now. Broken and bitter and living in someone's basement. If I'd been weak, if I'd just accepted my place on the floor and let you and Vanessa have everything, I'd be the one with nothing. But I fought back. And because I did, I have my home, my job, my dignity, my future. And you have debt and regret. "I deserve it," he said. "All of it, I know that." "Yes, you do," I agreed. "And Marcus, it's going to get worse before it gets better. That debt you have. With interest, it's going to take you years to pay off. Working 2 jobs, barely scraping by. You're going to be 45 years old, living in your brother's basement with nothing to show for your life except a credit score in the toilet and a track record of betrayal. And every day, you're going to think about the life you could have had, the wife who loved you, the home you owned. The comfortable life you threw away. That's your consequence. And unlike our marriage, unlike our house, unlike everything you tried to take from me, that consequence is something you can't escape." He was crying now, actually crying. Tears streaming down his face right there in the grocery store parking lot. "I don't expect you to care," he said through the tears. "But I just need to say this. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it. I destroyed us. And I'm so sorry." I picked up my grocery bags, looked at him one last time. "Goodbye, Marcus. I hope you figure your life out. I really do. Not for your sake, but because I don't want you to become a cautionary tale I have to tell for the rest of my life. I want to forget you existed. And I can't do that if you're still hanging around being miserable and pathetic. So get it together. Pay off your debt. Learn to be a decent human being. And stay out of my life." I walked to my car, loaded my groceries, drove away without looking back. And that was it. The final confrontation I didn't know I needed. The last time I ever saw Marcus Harrison. And as I drove home to my house, my sanctuary, my space that was entirely mine, I realized something profound. I'd won. Not just the divorce, not just the house. I'd won my life back. When I got home, I unpacked my groceries and noticed my hands were shaking slightly. The adrenaline of the encounter wearing off. I made myself tea, sat on my couch that no one else had claimed to, and I let myself process what had just happened. Sarah called an hour later. We'd made plans to have dinner that night. "Hey," she said when I answered. "Still on for tonight." "Actually," I said, "can you come over now? I need to tell you something." She arrived 20 minutes later with a bottle of wine and concern written all over her face. I told her about the grocery store, about Marcus, about everything he'd said. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "How do you feel?" she finally asked. "Honestly, I feel free," I said. "Like that was the last chain connecting me to that part of my life, and now it's broken. He's real to me now, not the fantasy version I married, not the villain I built up in my head during the divorce, just a sad, broken man who made terrible choices. And I don't love him, I don't hate him, nothing." "That's healthy," Sarah said. "That's what moving on actually looks like." "I know," I said, "but it's also kind of sad, isn't it? 12 years of marriage reduced to nothing, like it never even mattered." "It mattered," Sarah said firmly. "It taught you what you don't want, what you won't accept, how strong you actually are. Those lessons matter even if the marriage doesn't anymore." She was right. I knew she was right. Those 6 weeks of hell, sleeping in the guest room, gathering evidence, planning my escape, they'd transformed me. I wasn't the woman who'd married Marcus at 28, desperate for love and validation. I wasn't even the woman who'd woken up in the guest room that first morning, broken and humiliated. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. Over the next few days, I found myself thinking about the encounter less and less, moving on from even the memory of it. I threw myself into my life with renewed energy. I'd been thinking about making some changes at work, maybe pursuing a promotion I'd been too timid to go for before. The old Jennifer would have worried about seeming too ambitious, too pushy. The new Jennifer applied for the senior management position without hesitation. I got it. The promotion came through 3 weeks later, along with a significant raise. My boss told me I'd been their first choice, that they'd been hoping I'd apply, that I'd been undervaluing myself for years, and they were thrilled to finally recognize my contributions properly. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 12 years, I'd been undervalued at home while excelling at work. And now that the dead weight of my marriage was gone, the professional recognition was flowing in. I used some of the raise money to hire an interior designer, someone to help me make the house truly mine. We repainted every room, changed out the furniture Marcus had picked, added personal touches that reflected who I actually was, not who I'd been trying to be to please him. The house transformed from a place of pain into a place of peace. Every corner held a memory of my resilience now, not my humiliation. Friends started coming around more. People I'd lost touch with during the marriage when Marcus always had some excuse for why we couldn't host or why I couldn't go out. They'd noticed, they told me, noticed how small I'd become, how quiet, how I'd stopped talking about my own interests and just echoed whatever Marcus said. They'd been worried but hadn't known how to help. Now, seeing me vibrant and alive again, they were relieved, supportive. And slowly, my house filled with laughter and friendship, and the kind of warmth that had been missing for so long. About a month after the grocery store encounter, I was having dinner with a group of girlfriends when one of them asked if I was dating yet. The question surprised me. I hadn't even thought about it. Hadn't considered that I was allowed to, that I was free to. "No," I said, "I don't think I'm ready for that." "That's okay," she said. "But when you are ready, you're going to be such a catch. Successful, independent, owns her own home. You're going to have men lining up." I laughed it off, but later that night, lying in my bed, I thought about it seriously. Did I want to date again? Did I want another relationship? The idea felt foreign, scary. I'd been so burned by Marcus that the thought of trusting someone else, opening myself up to that kind of hurt again, seemed impossible. But then again, I'd thought fighting back against Marcus was impossible. I'd thought surviving those 6 weeks was impossible. I'd thought winning the divorce was impossible. And I'd done all of it. So maybe, eventually, when I was ready, opening myself to love again wouldn't be impossible either, just difficult. And I'd proven I could handle difficult. For now, though, I was content with where I was. Single, independent, thriving. I had my house, my job, my friends, my peace. I had mornings where I woke up without dread. Evenings where I came home to silence instead of tension. Weekends where I did exactly what I wanted without having to consider anyone else's needs or moods or affairs. I ran into Marcus's brother once at a coffee shop. He recognized me, came over looking uncomfortable. "Jennifer," he said, "I just want you to know what Marcus did, it was inexcusable. Our whole family was appalled." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. "How is he doing?" I asked, not because I cared deeply, but because it seemed like the polite thing to ask. "He's making progress," his brother said carefully. "Got a better job, started therapy, he's trying to get his life together." I think losing you really woke him up to the kind of person he'd become. "I hope it sticks," I said, and I meant that too, not for Marcus's sake, but for the sake of any future woman who might cross his path. I hoped he really had learned, really had changed, so no one else would have to go through what I did. His brother nodded. "For what it's worth, he talks about you sometimes, about how you were the strong one, how he never appreciated what he had. I think he's finally seeing clearly." "That's good," I said. "Everyone deserves clarity eventually." We said our goodbyes, and I left the coffee shop feeling nothing. No pain, no anger, no satisfaction. Just the neutral acknowledgement that Marcus was a person who existed somewhere in the world, living his life, and I was a person who existed somewhere else, living mine. And those two lives would never intersect again. The final piece of closure came unexpectedly about 2 months after the divorce. I received a letter in the mail, not from Marcus, but from his lawyer. It was formal, professional. It informed me that Marcus had filed for bankruptcy. The credit card debt, combined with legal fees and general poor financial management, had become insurmountable. He was declaring bankruptcy, and as part of that process, I needed to be notified as his ex-spouse in case there were any lingering financial entanglements. There weren't. The divorce settlement had been clear. His debts were his. Mine were mine. But seeing that letter, seeing the official confirmation that Marcus had hit absolute rock bottom, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that I'd gotten out when I did. Gratitude that my evidence and Patricia's skill had ensured his financial implosion wasn't my problem. And yes, a small amount of satisfaction that the universe had delivered its own justice beyond what the courts had ordered. I filed the letter away in a folder labeled Marcus Final and closed it, literally and figuratively. That chapter of my life was done. The book was closed. Whatever happened to Marcus from this point forward was his story to live, not mine to witness. I was free, truly, completely free. And standing in my home office, looking at that closed folder, I made myself a promise. I would never again make myself small for someone else's comfort. Never again ignore red flags because I was afraid of being alone. Never again pay for someone else's dreams while sacrificing my own. I'd learned the hard way what I was worth, and I'd never forget it again. The final confrontation hadn't been dramatic. There'd been no screaming, no violence, no grand gestures. Just a sad man in a parking lot admitting his failures. Just a woman who'd found her strength, walking away without looking back. Sometimes that's all closure is. Not fireworks and vindication, but quiet certainty that you made the right choice. That you survived. That you won by refusing to be destroyed. And I had won. Marcus had tried to take everything from me, and instead I'd taken my life back. My home, my dignity, my future. That was my victory, not his bankruptcy or his suffering, but my survival, my renaissance, my proof that you can be broken down to nothing and build yourself back up into something stronger than before.